No economic recovery in sight. How do you put together a consumer economy that works when the consumers are out of work? There are now more than 5 unemployed workers for every job opening in the United States. The ranks of the poor are growing. Welfare rolls are rising rapidly. And young American men on a broad front are falling into an abyss of joblessness. Some months ago, the Obama administration and various mainstream economists forecast a peak unemployment rate of roughly 8% this year. It has already reached 9.4%, and most economists now expect it to hit 10% or higher. Economists are currently spreading the word that the recession could end sometime this year, but the unemployment rate will continue to climb. So then, that's not a recovery. That's mumbo jumbo, hocus pocus. So why this rampant joblessness is not viewed as a crisis and approached with a sense of urgency and commitment that a crisis warrants is incomprehensible, because joblessness is the real crisis. No job growth, no economic recovery. The Obama administration has committed a great deal of money to keep the economy from collapsing entirely. But that is not enough to cope with the scope of the jobless crisis. There were roughly 7 million people officially counted as unemployed in November 2007, a month before the recession began. Now there are approximately 14 million. If you add to those unemployed the individuals, those who are working part-time but would like to work full-time, and those who want jobs but have become discouraged and stopped looking, you get an underutilization rate that is truly alarming. By May 2009, according to the Center for Labor Market Studies at Northeastern University in Boston, the total number of underutilized workers had increased dramatically from 15.63 million to 29.37 million, a rise of 13.7 million, or 88%, and still climbing. Nearly 30 million working age individuals were underutilized in May 2009, the largest number in our nation's history ever. The overall labor underutilization rate in May 2009 had risen to 18.2%, its highest value in 26 years. If it were true that the recession is approaching its end, and that these startling high numbers were about to begin a steady and substantial decline, there would be much less reason for alarm. But while there is evidence the recession is easing a little, hardly anyone believes a big-time employment turnaround is in the offing. 3/4 of the workers let go over the past year were permanently displaced, as opposed to temporarily laid off. So they won't be going back to their jobs when economic conditions improve. And many of those who were permanently displaced were in fields like construction and manufacturing, in which the odds of finding work, even if or after recovery was to take hold, are not very good. And the Another startling aspect of this economic downturn is the toll it has taken on men, especially young men. Men accounted for nearly 80% of the loss in employment in this recession. As the Labor Market Center reported, the unemployment rate for males in April 2009 was approximately 10% versus only 7.2% for women. The largest absolute and relative gender gap in unemployment rates in the post-World War II period. So workers under 30 have sustained nearly half the net job losses since November 2007. That is not good. This is not a recipe for a strong economic recovery. Once the recession, or if the recession was to end, or even for a healthy society. Young males, especially, are being clobbered at an age when typically they'd be thinking about getting married or setting up new households and starting families, things like that. Moreover, work habits and experience developed in one's 20s often establishes the foundation for decades of employment and earnings. So you see, this is particularly bad. We've seen what happens when you rely on debt and inflated assets to keep the economy going or afloat. The economy can't be reestablished on a sound basis without aggressive efforts to put people back to work in jobs with decent wages. Again, no job growth, no economic recovery. We also need to consider the suffering that has been endured by these high levels of joblessness, including the profound negative effect on the families of the unemployed. What about the kids? The president of the Economic Policy Institute has warned about the consequences for children. What does it mean, he asked, when little kids or kids are under stress because there's no money in the household, or people have to move more, or are combining households, or lose their health insurance? I believe this is going to leave a permanent scar on a whole generation of kids. The first step in dealing with a crisis is to recognize that it exists. This is not a problem that will evaporate if or when the gross domestic product begins to creep, or if it could begin to creep into positive territory. No jobs, no economy, period. That's just the way it works. You must have positive job growth, not job losses, to have a real economic recovery. That's just the way it goes. And once again, there's something more going on here, something bigger than all this. And everything is connected. It's happening around the world. All the events. And they are increasing in frequency. And these are more signs of the end times transition days. Transition is happening. Everything that must change quickly or rapidly. There are many, many signs.